Dear students, distinguished dignitaries, scholars, fellow colleagues, and students, good afternoon. We are starting our session 3 of the 75th anniversary conference on Pakistan and changing global world order. Our session 3 is on issues of international concerns. And for the chair for the session is Senator retired Mr. Javed Jabbar. I request Mr. Javed Jabbar, former federal minister and co-founder, chairman, Social Policy and Development Center, Karachi, to please come on stage and join us. Now I would like to ask Dr. Rabia Akhtar, Director, Center for Security Strategy and Policy Research and Head of the School of Integrated Social Science, University of Lahore. Please join us on stage. Now I would like to call Mr. Ammar Jaffri, founder of Digital Pakistan, former Additional Director General, Federal Investigation Agency. Please join us on stage. Now, I would like to request Mr. Ali Tauqeer Sheikh, expert on climate change and development Pakistan, to please come and join us on stage. Ladies and gentlemen, I would like to introduce Mr. Senator Javed Jabbar.
Let's save time.
Okay. Thank you so much. Over to you, Javed Jabbar sir.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Thank you very much, Dr. Masooma Hassan, for making the mistake of inviting me to conduct this session. It's very nice of you. I hope you continue making these errors in the future as well. You've done that in the past, but it was a pleasure to attend the conference from the beginning. We had a very good opening speech by Dr. Masooma Hassan herself, laying out the remarkable evolution of PIIA over the past 75 years. Really something to be truly proud of. The first institution of its kind in our country, and in a country where we bemoan the fact that our institutions have not developed. Here's an excellent example of how a non-official institution working in an extremely sensitive, officially dominated field, international affairs, foreign policy, ijara dari hai of the state and the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, and don't you dare speak about foreign policy until you have the permission of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. But the PIIA has shown the capacity to conduct research, to publish journals, and to hold conferences and invite people to present very stimulating discourse. I think the succeeding session also, the keynote address by Ambassador Ashraf Jahangir Qazi was so refreshingly different, distinct in its approach to surveying the changing global order, taking the concept of the reality of climate change and then placing the gamut of international or interstate relations within that framework, and followed by a very interesting session, very varied, China, Africa, and Britain, America. The whole gamut was very ably conducted by Ambassador Najmuddin Sheikh. I am privileged to be in the company of two persons and one missing person. I hope that missing person is not related in any way to Balochistan. I'm sure he's related very much to the real Pakistan. Mr. Ammar Jaffri, I hope, joins us soon. But to my right is Mrs. Rabia Akhtar, Dr. Rabia Akhtar, who's come all the way from Lahore and is a very insightful commentator on the issues that she will be addressing. I deliberately refrained from reading out her very interesting bio note, which is available to you in the brochure. Similarly, to my left is Mr. Ali Tauqeer Sheikh, one of our country's most eminent environmentalists. He also writes regularly, and it's a pleasure to have you, Ali Tauqeer. And you will pardon my not reading out the bio note since I made the supreme sacrifice of not being introduced. So I hope you also do not mind this in the interest of time. But I'm not entirely benevolent in the sense that I would like to inflict just a few unprecious thoughts before risking inviting you. And I only want to say that the idea of bringing together in one session discourse on hybrid warfare, on cyber security and climate change is a very refreshingly different approach. On the face of it, you could say climate change belongs all on its own. It's in any case a supra framework. So why also have it in this session? But I think we live in an age which is quite exceptional, where we talk about climate change, but there's also something called information change. The kind of radical, momentous information change that has been occurring in our planet has never occurred before in history. Just as we are in the Anthropocene phase of history, where human beings are shaping the climate, never before has information shaped humanity and changed the direction of humanity the way it has been doing in the last 100 years, but more so in the last 30 or 40 years. We talk about CO2 emissions, but there's also information emissions. And just like a mirror of how innocent Pakistan is, 0.08% of carbon CO2 emissions, so too in information emissions. We have unfortunately contributed, or fortunately, unfortunately, contributed very little to the global quantum of data and information. That's due to whatever position we hold in human resource development. But that is not to bemoan ourselves entirely. We are a very dynamic, productive society, surprising to ourselves, surprising to the world. And I think after I make one more point, I will request Dr. Rabia Akhtar to proceed. And that point is that with information change and climate change taking place so simultaneously, information's quantum has created this condition of entropy, where the capacity of humanity to manage the information which itself produces is no longer guaranteed. Just as we are not able to control the roller coaster of destructive capitalism driven by limitless greed of consumerism, we are no longer able to control it. Even China is part of the roller coaster with a strong state. It has also surrendered to the market economy. So too in the case of the information sector, both combined have also changed the concept of physical frontiers. Now we bypass state frontiers. The state does not disappear, but the physicality of frontiers, Treaty of Westphalia 1648, is there, and yet it is not there. We know it is there because of Ukraine, because of Kashmir, because of Palestine, and yet the world of cyber information has done away with borders. And what does that mean for the future? We'll find out at the end of the session, hopefully. May I request Dr. Rabia Akhtar to proceed? Thank you.
Thank you so much, Chair. I would like to begin by thanking Ambassador Masooma Hassan, NPIIA, for inviting me to speak on hybrid warfare, new threats, complexity, and challenges in the global context. But I will, towards the end, touch upon as to how Pakistan also is affected. There are a lot of naysayers out there who do not believe in such a thing as hybrid warfare, but I am one of the believers because the evidence is overwhelming to join the other camp. The biggest threat today in the 21st century from hybrid warfare is the combination of traditional military tactics, cyber warfare, and information operations. This type of warfare allows state and non-state actors to employ a variety of tactics in order to achieve their goals, including the use of disinformation, propaganda, cyber attacks, and irregular forces. These tactics can be used to destabilize a region, weaken an adversary's economy, and undermine an adversary's political system. Hybrid warfare is particularly dangerous because it allows for a greater degree of deniability and can be difficult to detect and respond to. In all of the literature that is out there coming from the West, they would like you to believe that China is perhaps the most capable of conducting hybrid warfares. And China has the potential to use this type of warfare to damage the US in a number of ways. Number one, through cyber warfare. China could launch cyber attacks on US government and private sector systems to disrupt operations, steal sensitive data, and cause economic damage. Number two, through disinformation campaigns, China could use social media and other forms of media to spread false or misleading information about the US in order to create confusion and distrust among the population. Number three, through political subversion, China could use diplomatic channels, economic leverage, and other means to influence US policy decisions and undermine US interest. Number four, through economic warfare, China could use economic sanctions, embargoes, and currency manipulation to damage the US economy and weaken its global standing. And lastly, through military threats, China could use military exercises, military buildup, and other means to intimidate and coerce the US into changing its policies. But the other side is also true. The US could also use hybrid warfare tactics to damage China in a number of ways. Number one, through cyber attacks. The US could launch cyber attacks against critical infrastructure in China, such as its banking and energy systems. This could inflict economic damage and disrupt essential services. Number two, through information warfare. The United States could wage an information warfare campaign to spread false information and propaganda in order to undermine the Chinese government and weaken public confidence in it. Number three, through economic sanctions. The United States could impose economic sanctions on China, such as blocking its access to US markets and financial institutions in order to damage Chinese economy. And lastly, through military provocations, the US could use military provocations such as deploying warships in South China Sea or near Chinese border to increase tensions between the two nations and make it more difficult for China to focus on other issues. Therefore, hybrid warfare, which is often used in concert with other forms of conflict such as economic and political pressure, make it difficult to distinguish between the actions of a state actor and those of a non-state actor. The complexity of hybrid warfare and the challenges posed by it present a formidable task for militaries to counter. To effectively counter hybrid warfare, militaries must develop strategies that are tailored to specific tactics and objectives of the enemy. Additionally, they may also be able to detect and respond quickly to threats posed by non-state actors. And finally, they must be prepared to use a variety of tactics from traditional military forces to diplomatic and economic pressure to effectively counter hybrid warfare. Digital soldiers are a key part of any effective disinformation campaign, which is part of hybrid warfare. They are people who are responsible for spreading false information online, and they can be very dangerous. One of the most common ways digital soldiers use disinformation is by spreading fake news. And at one point or the other, all of us who are consumers of social media have come across such digital soldiers. Fake news is information which is fake, but it still can be spread intentionally to deceive people. Fake news can be used to spread hatred, division, and propaganda, and it can have a serious impact on public opinion. One example of how fake news can be used to manipulate public opinion is the Russiagate scandal. Russiagate is the name for a controversy over whether or not the Trump campaign colluded with Russia to win the 2016 US presidential election. Some people believe that Russiagate is a conspiracy theory and that there is no evidence that anything unusual happened. But there are others who believe that Russiagate is real and that Trump and his team colluded with Russia to win the election. Fake news stories can help to convince the second group of people the Russiagate is real, even if there is no evidence that it is. So digital soldiers use other methods as well to spread disinformation, and they can spread fake images and videos to manipulate people's emotions. They can also use social media to spread fake news stories and to organize anti-government protests. All of you are also familiar as to how India, for years on end, more than 15 years project that was unearthed by EU Disinfo Lab to discredit Pakistan in international circles. I would urge all of you to read one article written by Rebecca Hurstman titled Wormhole Escalation in the New Nuclear Age. Rebecca describes a number of challenges posed by hybrid threats and cross-domain deterrence in her essay. Hybrid warfare makes it difficult to identify and respond to threats, given that the methods of attack are often hidden or disguised. Cross-domain deterrence further complicates the matters, since it requires a state to be able to successfully deter an attack in one domain, such as conventional or cyber, by threatening retaliation in another domain, such as nuclear. This requires a high degree of coordination in strategy and the development of new capabilities to respond effectively to hybrid threats. Rebecca argues that the emergence of new technologies and weapon systems such as hypersonic weapons and cyber weapons further complicate the matters. These systems are difficult to monitor, making it difficult to identify the origin of attacks and predict their effects. Now I list several threats and challenges that emanate from hybrid warfare. The first threat is the increased risk of escalation. Hybrid warfare increases the risk of escalation due to the ambiguity of tactics employed. This can make it difficult to identify the source of threat, making it harder to determine how to respond and how to measure success or failure. Number two is increased vulnerability to cyber attacks. Hybrid warfare can leverage cyber attacks to gain access to sensitive information, disrupt critical infrastructure and networks, or artificially manipulate data. Third is increased risk of international conflict. Hybrid warfare can blur the lines between war and peace, making it difficult to distinguish between state-sponsored and non-state actors. This can increase the risk of international conflict. Increased chance of escalation. Hybrid warfare can quickly escalate beyond a localized conflict, as tactics like cyber attacks are not limited to geography or physical boundaries. Here, I would like to make a mention of the 2018 Nuclear Posture Review that was released under the Trump administration, in which the administration stated that if a cyber attack takes place against the US, then that's a non-strategic space, but the retaliation will be through first strike of nuclear weapons. And that opens a lot of, brings a lot of challenges for other states as well. And lastly, it's increased complexity, the threat. Hybrid warfare is highly complex. It makes it difficult to anticipate, prepare for, and respond to. This can make it harder for decision makers to develop effective strategies. Some of the challenges, after explaining the threats to you, the first challenge is to develop a comprehensive understanding. The hybrid warfare is often complex and dynamic, making it difficult to develop a comprehensive understanding of threats posed. And that's where I find our nation to be divided, because some believe in it and some don't. And I think there needs to be a holistic understanding of the type of threats that Pakistan faces today. The second challenge is adapting to the changing tactics. Since hybrid warfare tactics are constantly changing and evolving, this creates a challenge for militaries to keep up with the ever-changing tactics and devise new strategies to counter them. The third challenge is incorporating technology. Technology plays a significant role in hybrid warfare and can be used to quickly adapt and change tactics. This creates a challenge for militaries to incorporate the latest technologies in their strategies and equipment. The fourth challenge is combating disinformation. Hybrid warfare often relies on the spread of disinformation to cause confusion and undermine public opinion. This creates a challenge for both the government and the militaries to combat this type of warfare and protect their citizens from false information. The fifth challenge is maintaining public support. Hybrid warfare tactics often target public opinion and can cause a loss of public support for governmental or military actions. This requires militaries to ensure that their actions are seen as legitimate and protect their public image. Now, Pakistan is not new to hybrid warfare, but it has to develop a proper strategy to deal with the threats generated by this type of warfare. I propose 10 ways which Pakistan can counter challenges posed by hybrid warfare. Number one is enhancing its intelligence gathering and surveillance capabilities to better anticipate and respond to hybrid threats. Second, strengthening the capacity of its security forces to respond to unconventional warfare tactics, including cyber warfare. Third, developing effective communication strategies to counter hostile propaganda and disinformation campaigns. Number four is establishing a national defense strategy that is tailored to address hybrid threats. Fifth, increasing regional international cooperation to counter hybrid warfare activities. Sixth, strengthening its cyber defense mechanisms to protect its critical infrastructure and IT systems. Number seven, developing methods of early warning and rapid response to hybrid threats. Number eight, implementing comprehensive legal and regulatory frameworks to protect the country from hybrid threats. Number nine is enhancing the capacity of its security forces to respond to hybrid warfare threats. And lastly, strengthening its international partnerships and alliances to better counter hybrid warfare. Now, some of these might be happening outside the public purview, but I thought that I would list them here in any case. Lastly, a word on disruptive technologies. Disruptive technologies such as artificial intelligence, cyber weapons, and autonomous weapon systems can increase the threat of war in several ways. These technologies can make military operations more efficient, making it easier for countries to launch surprise attacks. Secondly, they can make it more difficult to identify the source of an attack, making it harder for governments to respond to it. This can enable states to rapidly develop and deploy new military capabilities, leading to a heightened potential for a conflict. And finally, disruptive technologies can create new security dynamics that are difficult to manage, as states may have difficulty understanding the implications of these technologies and may be unable to respond to them. So I let you choose your side. Where do you fall, to the naysayers or the believers? Thank you so much.
That's very concisely presented, Rabia Sahaba. Very good, most interesting points you presented. And we found Mr. Ammar Jaffri, Mubarak, we have found you. You were missing in the Anyway, I'm so glad that you've come.
Thank you.
And please, your turn.
सर बहुत शुक्रिया आपका सो thank you Ammar ji. I'd like to thank Dr. Masooma Hassan. She was the head of NIPA Karachi when I did my NIPA in 1992. So we are very comfortable. And I really honored Dr. Sahaba for inviting me here. I'm thankful to all of you listening to me. My talk today is cyber security because I happen to be the founding head of cyber wing of IFIA, artificial intelligence and use of emerging technology in interstate relationship. It's a very complicated topic. It's not my subject, but I'll try to contribute whatever I can. Very briefly about myself, as I told you, I retired as Additional Director General FIA, and I did nothing in my life except technologies. I have the honor of setting up the airport systems, your passport systems, your cyber security systems. So during my service in government, Alhamdulillah, after my retirement, I am working with a lot of international national organizations. I'm working with US organizations, I'm working with Chinese organizations. On all these things I'll be talking about today. So with all these almost 50 years of experience, I'm here to speak on a topic which is very delicate. And you rightly said, actually world is redefining itself. I think in the entire human history, this era is totally different because the entire history of human history is on one side. And right now, I normally talk to my students in universities that where we were standing in 1970, we have again come back to that stage. In 1970, every nation has a chance to go with the same speed. Every nation, including Pakistan. So those who delivered, they are leading it. Those who didn't deliver, you can see the results. But interestingly, the emerging technologies, she talked about it a lot of that. I want to touch upon that. Artificial intelligence, metaverse, blockchain, Internet of Things. Yeah, there is no, you can talk on these things. But all these opportunities are now available to every country equally. So we are back to square one. So it's a judgment call now. Anybody, any country can. Interestingly, Pakistan having more than 80% of its youth. I'm very, very positive about it. We can still make the change, right? Internet is a driving force. We had internet. We have internet, but the internet of 2 to 5 years will be totally different. You know, we won't talk about GPS. We talk about VPS, virtual position systems. So all these things which is now your lifeline is going to cut now. So a judgment call for you. Learn it or replace. So the era of 1970s back again, and all, especially youth, listen to me. You have got an opportunity, and in every crisis there is an opportunity. World sees as a crisis, I see as an opportunity, right? You know, this present digital transformation has created a new need. This is very important to keep internet in upper space beyond geopolitical politics. You know, in the last 50 years, we have been sending something to space. I don't know what was that, but now it's time to. It's going to come back again, and we sent it with planning. It will come back without planning. I'll talk about it. I'll talk about it. Right? We sent it with a lot of plannings that this is going to deliver this. It has delivered, but will come back without planning. It will come back without planning. I think Russia and China, even Soviet Union, Korea, Japan, they are one on one thing. That this is not, they are not going to touch these two things: internet and the space, right? These two things, CPAC and BRI. Only this morning I was in a webinar talking to, I think, 30. There were the reps from 30 countries, and I was speaking on the almost same topic, cybersecurity. It was organized by China CERT, CN CERT. So I think some years before in China, I told them that if CPAC is not successful, forget about BRI. Trust you me. Because CPAC is the first responder of BRI. As vehicles will come out of China, you'll have to face Hunza, Khanjarab, Rawalpindi, Balochistan, Gwadar, then you'll go forward, right? There have been a lot of efforts to divert these routes, but I think this is the most economical route for China right now. I think the gentleman sitting right to me can speak a lot on these topics, right? But the existing gaps, you know, 3 things have affected: COVID, conflicts, and lastly the climate change. I call it 3 Ps. These 3 Ps have given an opportunity, and some countries put it in trouble. Now it's up to you whether you want to land in the opportunity land or in the trouble land. So, but this is an opportunity, right? I think she has talked a lot about deep fake and all these things, fake and all these things. You know, these are all derivatives. This is production of something. Just think for a minute, why somebody is investing in dark deep web? I spent 20 years of my life in catching the criminals in dark deep web. They have a mission. Some of them are state actors. Some of they are there to earn money. Some of them are criminals, right? Some are involved in transnational crimes. So try to understand that why we need global cooperation. Why interstate relationship is important now. I think gone are the areas when diplomatic, most of you are diplomats. I'm sorry to inform all of you. You were the past of diplomacy. The future of diplomacy is digital diplomacy. Anybody in any country can pick up the phone, talk to anybody in another country. No law can stop the person. No law can stop the person. Previously, there were the channels. You have to go to the foreign office. You have to write a letter to the ambassador. The ambassador will talk to local people. There were so many commercial attaché, A attaché, B attaché, C attaché. Who's going to care about them now? So now, I went to foreign office number of time. I told them, please change your strategy. And the good news is they are already changing. I think there have been some good officers there. They have established their IT department, their cybersecurity department, their SDG department. They have already done it. But the pace is very slow, let me tell you. They have to accelerate their pace. सर आपने 2 मिनट पहले बताया. अच्छा, ये जो न्यू ट्रेंड्स हैं, डीप फेक और ये सारी चीज़ें, disinformation, I think she spoke a lot on these things. What we need to do? We need trained manpower. Trained manpower, not from the university degrees, skill based, certified trained manpower. You know, the Google and Amazon, they have said master's degree on one side, 4 months certificate on one side. Choice is yours. You keep on producing unemployed graduates. Keep on producing. Few millions are there, few other millions will be added. Nothing. So we need to focus very sharply how to train the skilled manpower. The digital forensics is something which is required everywhere. It's required by police, it's required by technology companies, it's required by everybody. Because now it's a digital evidence. It's a digital evidence. In this city, I have been a number of times investigating things. So everything goes to digital evidence. And now the digital evidence is not in the files, not in the papers, it's in the data. Right, the future, as she rightly said, the future wars will not be foot on the grounds. There will be no foot on the ground. There will be no aeroplanes. The hybrid war is somebody will disrupt your critical infrastructure. Somebody with some objectives will destroy your mindset of the people. You know, artificial intelligence can change your mindset. They can simply change your mindsets. I'll talk about it if the time allows me. We need to have demand-driven skills, hands-on knowledges, and we need to understand the latest trends of cyber attack. What is the latest trend? Nobody is going to tell you. It is not the era of reactive cybersecurity. All people sitting here, it is the era of proactive cybersecurity. You must tell the organization that this is going to happen with you after 2 months, after 2 days, after 2 hours. How it is possible? Just you have to do some cyber intelligence, threat intelligence. This is a complete science now. You know, somebody entered into your server at some odd time and trying to find something, your system must catch it. This is a basic principle of intelligence. Don't catch the person when he's spying on you. Catch him when he's going to do something. Right? So this is we have to think. Right, Ji? Why interstate relationship is now need to be redefined? Criminals are operating beyond borders. There's no border for them. We have to get visa to go to some other country. They don't need to get visa in the cyberspace. So they are entering without that. Transnational crimes are growing very fast. What is transnational crime? In which a crime is taken place by a number of people living in different countries. So would they wait for your foreign office? Would they wait for your letters? No. So this human trafficking, even the human organs are being sold in transnational crimes. All these, the money laundering, all whatever we can talk about that. The people operating are in different countries. So now states have to redefine their relationship. Our economic system is changing very fast. We started from coins. We started rather from stone coin. There used to be stone coin at one time. And we ended with Bitcoin. I think Bitcoin is an old story now. Now people are talking about NFTs. Now people are talking about the total currency-less systems in which there will be one barcode. Okay, tug. No banks. I'm sorry, all of you working in the bank, there will be no premium for banks now. In America, people are talking about a central bank. You know, if you see the monetary transaction transfer systems, it's based on a who is giving, who is taking, and who is making the arrangements. The arrangements will go to blockchain. Blockchain is no more this Bitcoin system. It's much more beyond. You know, Bitcoin and cryptocurrency is one of the use cases of blockchain. It has 100 more uses. So the problem in Pakistan, I'm also part of it, is that universities are not teaching what they need to teach. They are teaching the education of the past. People need to be taught the education of the future. And the third point is that threats like climate change, they need joint actions. Climate change, you have been listening a lot on these in the last 2 months. We have to talk to each other, state to state level, without any regional politics or global politics. Because when the climate change, there are 2 types of calamity, man-made and nature-made. Yes, man-made we can control, but the nature-made calamity, we cannot. We talk about this. Close contacts between professionals from different countries in different domains for quick response. I am the first responder of any cybercrime in Pakistan. Outside people inform me that this site has been hacked. This is because I am running a search. I'll talk about it. 5. He said 5 minutes. I'm sorry, I'll have to go quick. AI. You know, so I'll have to be quick. I'll spend 1 minute on one slide. Okay. Maybe the question answer we can talk about because there's no limit on that, right? So why artificial intelligence is becoming so important? Trust you me, the future of AI is not even to its authors. Why somebody spent 50 million and stopped it? Elon Musk. He spent 50 million rupees on a project. He said, I do not want to be remembered in the history that this man invented something which could tell the other what he's thinking. And the time has come now. You know, any click on you make on internet can record you somewhere. And what is the somewhere? If we'll have time, we will talk about that. We need to keep its further progress within human understanding. Trust you me, even today, the progress of AI is going beyond human. My son is a Stanford graduate. He's running a big company in America. So whenever I go to this company, I trust you me. When I come back, I see what's happening in AI. Because the people here doesn't understand the full potential of AI. AI is going to drive everything, including the relationship with the states. I think there have been few examples. I can talk about it, that the state relations were very disturbed by AI. And the bad news is now the humans will not make decisions, the machine will take decisions. You know, recently there have been events in which the Google and Amazon computers started talking to each other without knowing what they are talking. Nobody knew about it. Some algorithm got it wrong. So it is a big challenge and we talk about it. Ethical use of AI. I think UN should come forward. Let me tell you, UN should come forward. Ethical use of AI. We need to maintain our freedom of thinking. To certain situation, privacy is vital. Because to my understanding, now there will be no privacy. And I think it's a human basic need for privacy. So it's a call for action now. Digital media today is more powerful than any print or electronic media. Any one tweet can change a total diplomacy, right? AI has the power to make humans think what the machine would want them to think. You will think what the machine will want you to think. This is a very, very testing situation, right? You will see those things only which somebody wants you to see, right? No, 2 minutes. So, emerging technology, every rising sun sees a new technology. We cannot stop time and technology. I can read my slide only now. Emerging technology like blah, blah, blah. We need to think about it. Space for all. You know, anybody working in SDGs, recently this SDG has been added. I think for the 8 years we talked about 17 SDGs. This has been added, space for all. You know, Hubble went and told us something. Then the James Webb went only 2 months before. It is telling us something which is of knowledge of next to 200 years, right? Climate change, energy for space. You know, now you'll get energy for space. You know, there's a water in space also, energy in space also. So, digital diplomacy, if the time will allow, I'd like to talk on that because so many people are sitting on diplomacies. SDGs, we need to talk on these things because it's a global agenda. 60% resource. The CERT's computer emergency response team, if you're not part of the solution, you're part of the problem. So all of you should come forward, talk to us. My team is sitting here. Maybe we can give you some training in the free, maybe something they charge. We'll talk about that. Historically, this 21st century Silk Road is the CPAC. 5,000 years before road is now 25th century Silk Road. Thank you very much. This is my credential. Anybody want to talk to me, I can talk. Thank you.
So nice to have a young man like you. Really, I mean, you're slightly older than I am, but nevertheless, like a great energy. Very good. Glucose D, Zindabad, huh? MashaAllah. Good. Ali Tauqeer Sheikh, it's set up so well for you. You have the monopoly on climate change, right? Please go ahead.
Can you hear me? Senator Javed Jabbar. Mr. Chair, you are a very fine chair that we have seen. I don't know, I look forward to your concluding comments how these three subjects are connected. I've been struggling with this in my mind, how they are connected. Still need to find some anchors, stronger anchors. मेरी presentation को चला दीजिए और material दे दीजिएगा. I'll talk about emerging issues and innovations in climate justice for the implementation of UNFCCC. UNFCCC is the Climate Change Convention on Climate Change. मैं सोच रहा था कि आसान तरीके इसको एक्सप्लेन करने का क्या है. अगर मैं डोमेस्टिक जस्टिस सिस्टम की बात करूं तो इट्स ड्रिवन बाय मैनी मिथ्स. कहते हैं मुझे बंदा दिखाओ, मैं बताऊंगा कौन सा कानून अप्लाई करना है. कहते हैं वकील क्या करना है, हम जज कर लेंगे. कहते हैं कि जस्टिस इज वेरी डिलेड and therefore denied, and so on and so forth. I'm sure you can think of many other myths. In the international arena, these myths may not be very dissimilar from what we have in the domestic setting. क्यों जी चल गया कि नहीं? लफ्ज़ भी आएंगे कि यही आएगा? हाँ? एक दफ़ा स्टार्ट करवा दीजिए फिर मैं आगे फाइन. Anyways, global discourse has moved from the notion of climate justice to just transition. And I want to underline this. The notion of climate justice was that those who have caused climate change by higher emissions have some responsibility towards who have not but are victim. But now the technologies and the changes, transition towards net zero and all other elements are saying those who will be victim of transition need to be looked after. They need to be upskilled. They need to be brought under the justice, and that is called just transition. For example, if we close coal mines, what crime the children of the coal miners have committed if their parents are out of job and they don't have a place to go. So in order for the transition to be just, can we look after the interests of those who will be affected by this transition. But very importantly, I want to, Mr. Chair, with your help, there was a very famous principle called shared but differentiated responsibility adopted in Rio 30 years ago. This was that all of us are responsible and will work collectively, but the responsibility is differentiated. In having this principle, we in the developing countries thought grants and free money. Those who are responsible will help us come up. But in 3 decades' time, the concept has moved quite a bit. There are no more grants available. There's no free finance. All kinds of private sector investments, JVs, and complex public-private partnerships have replaced mostly this principle in all international lending, be it GCF, Clean Climate Fund, or others. More complex principles have emerged, such as loss and damage. Loss and damage, we heard quite a bit about this. It has no space in the International Convention. The convention had only space for mitigation and adaptation. And we didn't know where to place it. The Paris Agreement very specifically says no to C word. C word is compensation, attribution, or retribution. So what loss and damage has given you a window to support financing whenever that matures to do things that cannot be done under adaptation, that is beyond adaptation. But it does not accept the principle of responsibility that was accepted under shared but differentiated responsibility. Other complex elements have also emerged, and I just want to mention 1 or 2. For example, if Pakistan falls behind on development as it appears that we are falling. With almost 100 million people closer to poverty line or below the poverty line, and 300 million in India below the poverty line, and maybe another 100 million or close to it in India, the world cannot develop. World economy will come to a halt. And it is the collective good for the world now to think of adaptation in Pakistan or India or in Bangladesh or many other countries as a collective good. So it is not the favor that we are looking for. It is for the health of global economy and its development and its growth and sharing of prosperity that you need to ensure that the countries with such huge populations do not fall behind. And that is global common goods concept. It can be even more complex, but I will move on to another element. माफ़ी चाहता हूँ, मैं इसको फॉलो करना चाहता हूँ, but once I conquer this, I'll be okay. पाकिस्तान में बात करना बड़ा आसान है, मैं 2 मिनट में हिस्ट्री ऑफ क्लाइमेट जस्टिस समझा सकता हूँ. It's a history not older than 50 years. Started with Stockholm Conference, जहाँ पे 2 बातें बड़ी मज़ेदार हुई थी. एक मिसेस गांधी की पार्टिसिपेशन थी हिंदुस्तान से. उन्होंने कहा कि आप एनवायरनमेंट की बात कर रहे हैं, you should be talking about poverty. She was dismissed at the time, arrogantly, that we are talking about much bigger and noble cause about climate change. Second, they talked about urban pollution, and Pakistan was represented by Mrs. Nusrat Bhutto. When she came back, Urban Affairs Unit was established. And since then, we have followed a focus on brown environmental issues as a state policy. All other efforts, such as NCS, National Conservation Strategy, that had 14 areas, were mostly ignored. Now, this was 50 years ago. और जो स्टॉकहोम के प्रिंसिपल्स थे 1972 में, उसकी बेसिस के ऊपर प्लानिंग डॉक्यूमेंट्स बने, उसकी बेसिस के ऊपर लाइसेंसेस इशू हुए, उसकी बेसिस के ऊपर परमिट्स इशू हुए. एंड numerous conventions, just about every convention except for Ramsar was inspired by Stockholm meeting. And जितने आपको conventions के नाम नजर आते हैं यूरोपियन सिटीज के साथ, कोई बॉन कन्वेंशन है, कोई वियना कन्वेंशन है, कोई रॉटरडम कन्वेंशन है, Pakistan has signed almost 24 of them. All of them were inspired and they fall in this category and they have a history of 50 years old. And then 30 उनकी इंटरप्रिटेशन, उनकी जो इम्प्लीमेंटेशन के इश्यूज आते हैं, उसके साथ ये लॉज जब इम्प्लीमेंट होते हैं सोसाइटी में तो ये होते हैं. हमारे यहाँ अभी ये थोड़ा सा कॉन्सेप्चुअल लेवल पे है, जो अभी मैं आपको दिखाने की कोशिश करता हूँ, जो मिडिल लेवल है, कॉन्स्टिट्यूशनल लेवल. पाकिस्तान में जो डेवलपमेंट हुई है वो 4 स्टेप्स में हुई है. सबसे पहले जो हुई, नीचे से अगर पढ़ना शुरू करें, those of you who have followed it will know कि पब्लिक इंटरेस्ट लिटिगेशन पाकिस्तान में शाला ज़ियार वर्सेस बाबरा के साथ शुरू हुई थी 1994. उसके बाद बहुत सारी आई है. उसके बाद सुप्रीम कोर्ट्स ने और हाई कोर्ट्स ने ग्रीन बेंच बनाने शुरू किए, रेगुलेटरी अथॉरिटीज बनानी शुरू की, ट्रिब्यूनल्स, एनवायरमेंटल ट्रिब्यूनल्स बनाने शुरू किए. हर प्रोविंस में बनाए, हर गवर्नमेंट ने बनाए. वो मोस्टली डिसफंक्शनल रहे, मोस्टली डॉर्मेंट रहे, मोस्टली इनकंसिस्टेंट रहे, बट दैट वाज अ वेरी वेरी बिग एंड पॉइंटिंग स्टेप दैट पाकिस्तान हैज टेकन. इट्स स्टिल देयर. उसके बाद जो मेन डेवलपमेंट हुई है पाकिस्तान में, जिसको मैंने कहा मोस्टली जहाँ पे राइट्स हमारे डिटर्मन हुए हैं, वो आर्टिकल 9 की इंटरप्रिटेशन है. हमारा कॉन्स्टिट्यूशन एनवायरनमेंट का जिक्र नहीं करता, क्लाइमेट चेंज का जिक्र नहीं करता, मगर राइट टू लाइफ का करता है. और हमारा जो कॉन्स्टिट्यूशन की इंटरप्रिटेशन है वो कहती है कुछ लाइफ को क्या करना है जिसमें क्लीन एयर नहीं है या ड्रिंकिंग वाटर नहीं है या हेल्दी फूड नहीं है, फूड चेन नहीं है. तो therefore the interpretation that exists for Article 9 has enriched that. Mostly जो superior courts के decision थे वो implement नहीं हुए. I am aware of at least 7 commissions at the top of this that were constituted by the superior courts कि चलो citizens का commission बना देते हैं. हुआ ये, Senator Jabbar will bear me out in this, जो courts के decisions थे उनकी सही implementation नहीं होती. लिहाजा जो हमारे लॉस थे वो बड़े प्यूनिटिव किस्म के लॉ थे कि EPS बना दें और जाके ऑफिसर जो हैं वो फाइन कर देंगे, जुर्माने कर देंगे, फैक्ट्री बंद कर देंगे. तो स्टेट की प्राइवेट सेक्टर के साथ, के इंडस्ट्रियल डेवलपमेंट के साथ एक एडवर्सोरियल रिलेशनशिप बनी. इन्वायरमेंटल एजेंडा डिड नॉट कंसोलिडेट, डिड नॉट टेक रूट्स. और कोर्ट्स ने जब इंटरप्रेट करना शुरू किया तो उन्होंने कहा कि मे बी वी नीड टू वर्क थ्रू द एमिनेंट सिटीजन्स हु आर रिस्पेक्टेड अक्रॉस सेक्टर्स. तो 8 या 9 कमीशन बने. आई वाज फॉर्चुनेट टू बी पार्ट ऑफ दीज 3, जिसमें कोर्ट्स ने बहुत ज़्यादा रिस्पॉन्सिबिलिटी कमिश्नर्स को दी कि आप स्टेक होल्डर्स को इकट्ठा करके एक टेबल पे लाएं और कंसेंसस के साथ कोई रिकमेंडेशन दें. उस डिसीजन को हम लेके चले गए. दिस इन नटशेल इज़ माई अंडरस्टैंडिंग ऑफ द डेवलपमेंट ऑफ क्लाइमेट जस्टिस इन पाकिस्तान. जो रियो में जो प्रिंसिपल्स बने थे और जो दूसरे प्रिंसिपल्स आए उनकी पाकिस्तान में बड़ी जल्दी अपटेक हुई. आई हैव ऑलरेडी मेंशन्ड शैलाज़िया वर्सेस वापडा 1994. दैट वाज ए पॉइंटिंग केस. मगर 4 प्रिंसिपल्स जो मैंने यहाँ आपके सामने पेश किए हैं, दे वर द की प्रिंसिपल्स दैट हैव अपीयर्ड इन सेवरल जजमेंट्स, इन सुपीरियर कोर्ट जजमेंट्स. सिंध हाई कोर्ट, पंजाब हाई कोर्ट, इवन बलूचिस्तान हाई कोर्ट, सुपीरियर जुडिशरी. और इसमें जो प्रिंसिपल्स हैं ये आपके सामने हैं. जो सबसे ज़्यादा फेमस पाकिस्तान में है वो प्रिकॉशनरी प्रिंसिपल का है, जिसमें ये है कि जी अगर आपके ख्याल में इन्वायरमेंट को डैमेज होगा तो फिर काम नहीं करते. लेट्स गिव द बेनिफिट ऑफ द डाउट टू द इन्वायरमेंट एज अ गाइडिंग प्रिंसिपल. ये बिल्कुल ऐसे ही है कि गाड़ी आ रही है तो आप बच्चे को रोकते हैं कि गुजर जाए तो क्रॉस करना है. प्रिकॉशनरी प्रिंसिपल है. यू डोंट वांट टू टेक रिस्क. There were many cases, and some of these cases I'll present to you briefly for reasons of their uniqueness in global discourse on climate justice. In dubio pro nature, जो है कि जब doubt हो तो nature को support करना है. So don't get too afraid. The young students here with the. अब मैं आपको run करता हूँ चंद climate justice के principles. अब देखिए आपके जहन में 2 सवाल आ रहे होंगे बिकॉज ऑफ लिमिटेड टाइम. एक ये है कि मेरे राइट्स क्या हैं, दूसरा ये है कि मुझे राइट्स नहीं मिलते, इन्फोर्समेंट नहीं होती. कंप्लायंस इज़ अ डिस्टिंक्ट इशू फ्रॉम राइट्स. द क्लाइमेट राइट्स ऑफ सिटीजन्स ऑफ पाकिस्तान आर मच स्ट्रॉन्गर, मच बेटर डिफाइंड than in many other parts of the country, including in Indian jurisprudence. Many of Pakistani judgments are globally cited and referred to. They are helping us evolve climate justice principles in domestic settings. So therefore, out of my impatience, I may lose focus on the compliance, poor compliance. But my right is there. If I'm a aggrieved party, I can go and the court can hopefully support me on this. अब मैं आपको चंद प्रिंसिपल्स बताता हूँ. अभी तक मैंने जब भी सुना है ईंटें बनाने वाले भट्टों के बारे में तो वो सुना है पोल्यूशन होती है लाहौर में, फॉग इसलिए ज़्यादा है. अगर इस जजमेंट के की वर्ड्स को नीचे की तरफ देखें तो इट्स लिंकिंग विद डिजर्टिफिकेशन एंड फूड सिक्योरिटी. इट्स अ वेरी वेरी प्रोग्रेसिव इंटरप्रिटेशन ऑफ द एंटी-एनवायरमेंटल रोल that technology plays. So it's not question कि आप zigzag technology लगा लेंगे तो उसके साथ आपकी pollution ख़त्म हो जाएगी. The issue is much deeper than just the air quality. दूसरा जो केस आपके सामने है जस्टिस मिनल्ला का है, that I think is very remarkable case in many ways. हम जब भी बात करते हैं फॉरेस्ट्री की बड़े सुपरफिशियल तरीके के साथ करते हैं कि चलें जी कार्बन का सिंक है, चलें हमारे फोल्ड की सॉइल की स्टेबलाइजेशन हो जाएगी. इट्स वेरी रिफ्रेशिंग टू सी दैट द कोर्ट एंड द पाकिस्तानी लॉ देयरफॉर नाउ सेज कि जी दिस डिटरमिन्स the rights of the communities. They depend on them for medicine value, they need for economic terms, and therefore that's an extremely. A case that is my favorite that I wanted to go to refer to you is particularly important for city of Karachi that has been struggling for decades for urban planning, for your master plan. I struggle with it in Islamabad. And just about every city in Pakistan struggles with this. And the court is very specific in telling us, now anyone can cite this judgment and have a stay order against any changes that they make in your master plan, because it's a right that has been defined now. It says towards the end, आप उसको देखेंगे कि जी अच्छी तरह से सोच लीजिए कि इसके environmental impact क्या होंगे. You're changing the zoning laws. You're changing land use. I am not aware of any other country that says that the implications of animal rights are directly for the health and integrity of ecosystems and human rights. It's for the first time that you'll see in jurisprudence that human rights, animal rights, and environmental rights are clubbed as a solid triangle. And you're saying you violate one, it will be a broken triangle, you'll be violating others, and it will have a domino effect. Kindly do look at the last sentence of this last part of that judgment. I specifically dug it out to share it with you here. My time is up. I just want to mention, since I mentioned commissions, 8 or 9 commissions, I want to conclude on that, Mr. Chair. अब उन्होंने कोर्ट की जो जजमेंट्स आई हैं, previously I've seen those judgments. I'm not a lawyer, I don't have legal background, but to the extent that I can understand, come back and report to us. And now they're saying, come back and report to us if there are any violations. That is giving some teeth to the commission, which previously they did not have. I'm presently part of a commission that's looking at some environmental issues in the capital territory, Islamabad, and court's distinct orders are to us, draw our attention, and we will make it part of the agenda of CCI, Council of Common Interest. That is a remarkably strong support and impatience from the courts too. Now, apparently, democratic rights are better protected in democracies. Regrettably, in Pakistan, the development is not always democratized. It's hostage to mafias. It's hostage to states' maladaptation, schemes that are not resilient to floods and disasters. And in a remarkable judgment, I think it's my last slide, if you allow me to leave it here for you to read it if you can. See how the judgment is saying that the basic principles of the Constitution have to be climate and environment compliant. We cannot have two parallel paradigms. They have to be in sync. And preamble of the constitutional value of democracy under our Constitution is in effect climate democracy if we wish to actualize the Constitution. Unless there is a climate democracy, the constitutional rights are not implemented or not adhered to. I've taken my time. Mr. Chair, you were very kind to give me a little bit extra time. Thank you very much.
By focusing so specifically on Pakistan's institutional and judicial facets, you have given a very pertinent relevance to proceedings. And you asked me a very difficult question. How do we bind these three together? I'm sure much greater wisdom lies out there after listening to all three presentations. So I would not want to answer you right away. And yet I want to. I mean, you know, temptation, Oscar Wilde said it well, the best way to deal with temptation is to give in to it. So I'll give in to the fact that I can only see 4 very brief ways how this ostensibly disparate threesome is actually dealing with very shared issues. First, it's very clear that all the elements that they've highlighted, whether it's hybrid warfare, cybersecurity, climate change, as I hinted at the outset, are elements that affect all states, affect each of us. Those who are specially connected, the great global connectivity. There are still millions who do not have access to the internet, but we are talking now about the vast majority of the world's population is connected and it is vulnerable to climate change. So that ties all three together. The second is the challenge of regulation. Regulation on a global level and regulation at a national level and a regional level. We have excellent examples in the past 70 years of a new global order where people have been able to agree, states have agreed on law of the sea, on telecommunications, on aviation, on posts, so on and so forth. But when it comes to regulating anything like information, it's relatively easy to regulate the physical infrastructure, the hardware. So we have the International Telecommunication Union, we have informational regulatory processes. But when it comes to content, there is no unanimity on content. There are two extreme polarities. In certain countries of the world, especially in the West, you can use a four-letter word before and after you use the name of a holy prophet. Not our prophet, their own prophet. And that content is accessible in Pakistan today through Netflix. That content is not regulated. It is offensive. Fortunately, we don't have riots on the streets. But I mean, we respect that prophet. And to have someone use four-letter words and turn the name into an exclamation mark is just not acceptable to the social, cultural norms of most Muslim societies, all Muslim societies. So how do you go about regulating content when you have to deal with fake news, false news in the name of freedom of speech, freedom of information? And there is a segment of opinion within Pakistan which resists regulation of content, partly justifiably because of past bad precedents, but that's a murky area. Third, cybersecurity, hybrid warfare, very clearly are federal. They cannot be localized. It is a federal subject for regulation. But climate justice affects every province. It affects every union council. It affects every district council. And how you resolve this anomaly of regulating at the federal level and not being sure how it is going to be implemented at the micro level, at the district level, at the provinces level. Well, any move made by the Federation at this time is seen as a threat to the 18th Amendment, justifiably or wrongly. Any attempt to reform or amend the 18th Amendment, my God, the cry goes up, this is an invasion of provincial autonomy. And climate injustice is taking place at the grassroots of all four provinces and regions. And we have a relatively weak enforcement by provincial governments. And the fourth issue that I think has emerged in all three is role of institutions. And I hinted at that at the very outset that PIIA is an excellent example of how we can build institutions in civil society. But we do have the capacity in Pakistan of also building stable, efficient institutions in the public sector. We tend to underestimate it because our overall governance is very shabby and shoddy. But we overlook the fact that whether it is the Pakistan Atomic Energy Commission, whether it is NADRA, whether it is the State Bank. There are several institutions that continue to function high level of competence. And Ali Tauqeer's been pointing the role of the judiciary, which is very progressive. In some ways, Pakistan's judiciary, some ways, not all, we can be truly proud of. Transgender rights. Even today, the Federal Shariat Court has gone out of its way to express empathy for what happens to trans children. And let me take this opportunity to plug a great cinema film I saw by coincidence yesterday. Wow, Joyland. If you haven't seen it, please go and see it. It is a masterpiece. It makes you proud of being a Pakistani. What a sensitive film. And thank God the censors, despite the snipping, have allowed it. So please see it. Forget this conference, Dr. Masooma Hassan. Take them all to see Joyland this evening. Forget dinner. But those four. Now, the floor is open. Please, these three vulnerable, very vulnerable, innocent panelists are before you. Please, go ahead. Do introduce yourself. Thank you.
International Strategic Studies. And my question is for Mr. Jaffri. In a developing country such as Pakistan, what type of market system is needed, regulated, open, or hybrid, for the commercialization of AI, artificial intelligence, and how do we achieve this? This is my question. Thank you.
We are already confused in handling the last 10 years of currencies, last 10 years of financial systems. You know, this is the era of fintech. And to understand the era of fintech, you have to get the compliance from the very basics. So we'll have to take a start from the baseline. And trust you me, I don't see any baseline in financial systems, right? After every few other times, there are different policy. So the topic you are trying to touch is very delicate topic. That's why I said the authors of AI does not even know what it can do, right? There is a genuine need of using blockchain for it. You know, trust you me, blockchain is the only answer to all these questions. Why? Because blockchain provides you a platform, a framework in which human doesn't have any discretion. The discretion goes to a system, discretion goes to a framework, discretion goes to a policy, a process. So my quick answer will be, we will have to understand the fintech. Now we are going to use AI for all these financial matters we were talking about. You'll have to understand the behavior of the people. Why people loot you? Why they make a call to a lady only and say, "Aapki suki nikal aayi hai," and don't tell it to anybody. और वो पैसे ले लेता है. मैं रोज ये कॉलेज सुनता हूँ, ठीक है? क्योंकि एक माइंडसेट है ना कि जहाँ के फ्री मिले, वो कहते हैं आपके वो टीवी प्रोग्राम हमने किया तो आपका लॉटरी निकल आई. नोबडी अंडरस्टैंड. उसमें वो कुछ सच यूज़ करते हैं, कुछ झूठ यूज़ करते हैं. सच के अंदर वो कहते हैं आप परसों फला मॉल में गई थी, हाँ जी गए थे, वहाँ एक आपने टिकट लिया था, हाँ जी लिया था, वो लॉटरी निकल आई है. इसका मतलब देयर इज समबडी वाचिंग द लेडी गोइंग टू दैट मॉल. अब ये सब चीज़ें डाटा एनालिटिक्स में अवेलेबल होंगी. मुझे 2 मिनट लगेंगे एल्गोरिथम लिखने के अंदर, मुझे पता चलेगा लालची लोग कौन है, उन्हीं को कॉलेज जाएंगे. तो ये चीज़ बढ़ेगी, कम नहीं होगी. इसको कंट्रोल करने के लिए मैं समझता हूँ कि हमें डायलॉग करने चाहिए. ये तकरीर से काम नहीं चलेगा. एक तरफ रेगुलेटर्स बैठ जाएं, इंस्टीट्यूशन बैठ जाएं, एक तरफ ऐसे लोग बैठ जाएं, उनसे सवाल कर सकें कि दिस इशू इज इमर्जिंग नाउ, ऑलरेडी इमर्ज, बताएं क्या करना है. तकरीर नहीं चाहिए, तकरीरें बहुत हो गई. थैंक यू.
Thank you. Please do identify yourself. Yes, right at the end of the hall. हाथ ऊपर कर लें ताकि they know where to go. जी, अच्छा, आप जी.
My name is Bakar Najmuddin.
Yeah.
I have a question for Dr. Rabia. Why she was identifying some of those mechanism and architecture through which Pakistan could escape through this issue of hybrid warfare. She did talk about regional connectivity, a kind of regional cooperation. Then the question comes about, in the era of post-truth, where there is a divide between the society and the state, how do you explain the possibility of a regional partner that intends to use the same mechanism to offend or truncate your national security. And at the other hand, the state doesn't have this supremacy on the non-state actors. So how do we put all of this together? Thank you.
Thank you so much. So I think that's where the real challenge is for the state to identify as to what are the threats to its national security. And if hybrid warfare is one of the threats, then it requires a whole of the government and whole of the nation approach in order to defeat that. I believe that Pakistan has real potential to become a transit hub and make this move towards, earning the dividends that geoeconomics brings to it. But while we are at it, there are forces out there that are trying to undermine this collaboration with China. We have seen, disinformation being fed into the system through social media to discredit the China-Pakistan economic corridor and the kind of potential it has to bring prosperity to Pakistan. So these are some of the real issues that are out there. But I still am yet to see a strategy by the government, whatever form of government we have at present, to bring the nation together and identify these hybrid warfare threats. We are having very, very little conversation, on social media, on print or electronic media, as to what are some of the real threats to CPEC and who are the, state sponsors of disinformation against that. So that is a real challenge, and I don't have a very clear answer for you for that at this point. Thank you.
Thank you. I saw a hand there. G.
Hi, in Islam.
Udhar, sorry.
Well, this is Irfan Zaidi. I would like to, I have two questions. One for Dr. Rabia and the other one for for Jaffri Sahab. Dr. Rabia, well, we all know that this hybrid and fifth generation warfare or the deep technology is very harmful. And it's been long that it was the talk of the town. But, can you enlighten us that in context of Boris Johnson's statement that a young lad of merely 18 years old or 16 years old, while in his pajamas and having the first cup of coffee in the morning, he can provide enough damages that a whole army cannot provide in a month's time. I'm talking about a hacker. So what about if these non-state actors aggravated or grieved or saddened by anything, if you have found any lawmaking on the regional or international level like Interpol or United Nations, can you enlighten us on that? And the other question that I have for Jaffri Sahab is that you have spoken so much high of you while you are involved in so many different things abroad and inland. But sir, I believe you are aware of CDFST, the Center for Digital Forensic Science and Technology, the only institute that tends to spare digital forensics knowledge in the pupils of Pakistani universities. So sir, may I know what contribution have you made to activate it? Thank you.
Sorry, with great respect, we must not put anyone in the dock, so to speak. What have you done? And मैं आपका lawyer हूँ यार, कमाल है. With a briefless lawyer like me needs clients. So don't consider yourself being accused of anything. I think he means it in a good spirit.
Thank you, but thank you for the question, because this gives me an opportunity to explain myself. The first two forensic labs were made by FIA, and that was back in 2003, almost 20 years before. Alhamdulillah, I have the proud honor these two labs are still working and they are doing fine for FIE. These labs are FIE and we imported latest machinery for that. I'm not responsible after my retirement from FIE. I'm responsible till I got retired from there. So I think these were delivering fine, XRY, all these things. Latest technologies were there and we used to track people. We used to identify the digital footprints. And Alhamdulillah, I have the proud honor of raiding the biggest organization of this city. Even Karani and Kali, I raided that office. So many Western Union cases, I arrested so many people in one night. And only the thanks goes to the forensic people there at that particular time, at the back end. You know, the knowledge of forensic is changing very fast, let me tell you. Anybody interested in forensics knowledge, please forget about the physical daba shaba sara ye, teen daba ho gaya sara. Now think about the cloud forensics. There's a new science coming up. And again, as I've told you in my cloud forensics, right, sir? Because 90% information in next 3 to 5 years will go to cloud. So I think if some relevant organization invest in the cloud forensics, that's definitely going to deliver. To my understandings, there's a very, very poor knowledge in universities about the forensic sciences because for forensics you need hands-on. You can't teach forensics. You have to train people in digital forensics. ये कोई नई चीज़ नहीं है। आज से मेरा ख्याल हज़ारों साल पहले भी ये चीज़ मौजूद थी, फोरेंसिक्स जो थी। बहुत पहले मैंने पेरिस में कोर्स किया था, खातून ने बताया था कि जी जब बॉडी पड़ी होती थी वहाँ पर तो बताता थे उसका कीड़े जो करीब के होते थे, छोटे कीड़े हैं, उड़ने वाले कीड़े हैं, हड्डी खाने वाले कीड़े हैं, कि ये बॉडी कब डाली गई है यहाँ पे। यानी पुलिस इतनी ट्रेंड थी 300 साल पहले उस एरिया के अंदर। तो फोरेंसिक को नई चीज़ नहीं है, अब सिर्फ फ़र्क ये है कि अब हमें फोरेंसिक को रीडिफाइन करना है। एंड व्हेन यू रीडिफाइन समथिंग यू हैव टू अडॉप्ट द ग्लोबल बेस्ट प्रैक्टिसेस। इंटरनेशनल स्टैंडर्ड्स आ चुके हैं फोरेंसिक्स के ऊपर, टाइम नहीं है डिटेल में बात करने का। आईएसओ स्टैंडर्ड्स आ चुके हैं कि अल्हम्दुलिल्लाह मैं इस वक्त भी एज ए वॉलंटियर, लॉट ऑफ पीपल सिटिंग हियर, मैं गवर्नमेंट ऑफ पाकिस्तान की मदद भी करता हूँ। रिसेंटली नैब की मैंने मदद की है कई केसेस के अंदर फोरेंसिक्स के हवाले से। अभी यानी कोई 3 दिन पहले मुझे नैब सेक्रेटरी से फ़ोन आया कि जी वो जो केस पकड़ा हुआ है वो डिप्टी कमिश्नर्स का, कि उसके फोरेंसिक्स चाहिए, एंड वी डू इट एज ए वॉलंटियर। तो वट एवर आई कैन डू इन माई हम्बल कैपेसिटी। बट जो पुअर पार्ट है वो ये है कि बेशुमार इदारों के लाइसेंस ख़त्म हो चुके हैं। अब वो अगर मोबाइल फोरेंसिक करते हैं तो वो उस डेट के बाद के मोबाइल को वो उस पर काम नहीं कर सकते। तो इट्स ए टेक्निकल इशू। मैं अपने ज़माने का जवाब दे हूँ अल्हम्दुलिल्लाह, एंड आई एम प्राउड ऑफ इट कि वो मैंने काम किया। थैंक यू वेरी मच।
Yes, thank you. I'm sure कि सर बेहतर तौर पे बता सकते हैं laws, लेकिन पाकिस्तान में there are several laws जो cyber crime से related pass हुए हैं. First was there was one electronic transaction ordinance in 2002. Then there was prevention of electronic crimes or cyber crimes ordinance. Then came the comprehensive framework to deal with cyber crimes in 2016. At present, at the UN level, they finally started to negotiate a cybercrime treaty. Obviously, these negotiations are consensus-based, so they're going to take a lot of time. But the problem with all of this is that as to why, hacking as part of cyber warfare is dangerous is because of the issue of attribution and determining origin. And only the most sophisticated countries like, United States and China have, the national technical means or the forensics to relate back to the originator of a cyber attack or warfare. Countries like Pakistan don't have those means available yet, so we are most vulnerable. If an attack takes place, we'll definitely be hard-pressed to find out the origin of it. Thank you.
Thank you. Query?
Hello, I'm Arisha Anwar from Center for International Strategic Studies, Sindh, and my question is from Dr. Rabia Akhtar. So the International Policy Center for Inclusive Growth released an IMF Policy Prescriptions and Conditionalities titled Is the Washington Consensus Dead?, which states that IMF conditionalities are meant to alter behavior and induce changes in economic, political, and social structures of a state. So I would like to hear your views on international financial institutions or aid provided by them as a constituent or weapon of hybrid warfare. Thank you.
I would personally not think that going to IMF or making us go to the IMF is part of a hybrid warfare strategy. It's got everything to do with Pakistan's internal, domestic, economic situation. And it is not a story of today. It has been like that for decades now. Our dependency on IMF, I think we need to look more inwards, be more introspective in our analysis. Not everything can be blamed on fifth generation warfare. I think that's a bit of a paranoia as well. I think Pakistan, you keep hearing Pakistan needs to set its own economic house in order. And for that, we need to have a political consensus against corruption. We need to have people who would seriously put Pakistan first before their own self-interest. And years on end, this practice has been ongoing. So I do not personally, look at it as part of a hybrid warfare strategy. Thank you.
Thank you, Rabia Bibi. And of course, as we know, there is corruption at the top, and it has to begin at the top, the unraveling of corruption at the top. But mashallah, corruption is now a virus which is found in every street corner, in every locality of the country. So it's a great, phenomenal reconstruction, the moral reconstruction, which in every society is very difficult. But it's not just the top. I mean, we need a new ethic, and that will take a generation at least of education, reorientation, practical values, austerity, frugality, blah, blah, blah. So we have a long shift of work ahead of us. But may I put a question to Ali Tauqeer Sheikh, because I would like him to look at the subject of climate justice and share with us his views on how he sees Sharm el-Sheikh and the creation of this new climate justice fund. What bearing do you think it has? Does it reflect any improvement in interstate relations? Does it promise better prospects? What is your assessment?
Thank you, sir. It's a difficult question. Except for a modest agreement on loss and damage, there was no specific outcome. So in that sense, it was a failed COP. The agreement on loss and damage only assures that a fund will be set up. There's no specific time frame, and particularly there's no specificity on the size of the fund. We can assume that it will take about 3 to 5 years to operationalize this. And a colleague of mine, who is a friend of mine, who's an author of UNEP GAPS report, he did a Twitter-based survey for several hundred people that what do you think will be the size of this fund? 5 million, 50 million, 500 million, or 5 billion? 4 questions. Most people thought it will be less than 50 million or less. And the second question was that what do you think should be the size of this? More than 80% believe that the size should be more than 5 billion. Now, having said that, I want to reflect for a moment whether or not it will be accessible for countries like Pakistan. Climbing the GCF wall is very high. We have no accreditation, and countries like Pakistan are not expected to have accreditation. Accreditation to have direct access. We always go through intermediaries, ADB, UNDP, somebody else. And then you get pittance, not the real financing. The financing for loss and damage will be even harder because that has risk of attribution to it. And Western countries cannot accept an iota of doubt that the conversation can lead to lawsuits. And therefore, the Paris Agreement is very specific in Article 6.4 that any discussion on loss and damage will not mean attribution, retribution, or compensation. So that's very clearly written, and all countries, including Pakistan, have signed. Final comment on this. One of the problems with climate justice that we think that it's not a domestic issue. Policymakers use this as a diversion as the diversion tactics to say that since this system is not, global system is not very just, therefore we are not able to deliver. If people in Sindh are in destitute, the water is standing, or they're victims of houses, it has something to do with absence of climate justice in the country. I want to give you two examples. The disaster post-disaster assessment report produced by World Bank, ADB, EU, and UN agencies together with Planning Commission shows that the highest amount of disaster is loss and damage to public sector construction. Bridges, roads, power stations, so on and so forth. It only means not necessarily corruption, but poor standards of construction. Second biggest source of loss and damage is the private housing. Kacha ghar ho, pakka ghar ho, rural areas ka ghar ho, middle town mein ho, smaller towns mein ho. And that essentially means that the Council of Engineers has failed to deliver us climate resilient housing designs. And all of us have become accomplices through our housing societies and the rest of it. So vulnerability source is at home, not global.
Much as one wants to know, I deeply regret that I've been asked to vacate. Otherwise, they're threatening to remove me physically. So, but वो ये जालिम इधर यहाँ जालिमा यहाँ बैठी हैं, वो एक जालिम उधर पे. अब आप लास्ट चलें, absolutely the last 30-second question. जी अशफाक साहब, जी 30 seconds and 45 seconds for the answer. जी.
No, this is not a question.
अच्छा.
There was a lady who asked something about IMF. So I just want to tell that tomorrow my presentation is exactly on the same topic.
Okay.
Number
Good.
one.
Chal, that's good.
Rabia mentioned about hybrid war, linking hybrid war and IMF. Here is a book which I will give right after this to Rabia. Living Under Hybrid War, the economic warfare chapter is written by me, and I have identified 4 elements of economic warfare. IMF is the number one.
बहुत अच्छे. Thank you very much, Ashfaq Sahab. Very kind of you on that hopeful note. Confused as we are about how we will go forward, confusion is often a very healthy state, and I'm not deterred. It is a very grim world we are living in, but we are also living in a world which is the product of phenomenal, unprecedented creativity and energy. Humanity is capable of finding solutions. It has to begin at home in Pakistan, a new ethic of austerity and self-reliance, and getting rid of these SUV culture and the DHAs and the civil and the military aggrandizing themselves, the elites. I mean, we need a radical change of outlook, and it has to begin with each of us, with me, not even with you, with me. I'll try and go and change immediately. Thank you very much. All the best to you. Thanks for participating. And thank you, speakers. Thank you.
In-depth remarks. Thank you, Javed Jabbar Sahab, for your concluding comments in regard. And I would like to thank all the panelists for enlightening us on diverse issues ranging from